Hi, Mrs. Moyers class and Mrs. Clark class. It's Mrs. Gillmore, and I know it's been a really long time, and I've missed coming in to read to you. So we're going to do this by video, and we'll see how this goes. It's different for me, and I know it's different for you too, but I'm excited to be able to share one of my favorite books with you. And it's one that I've ended the school year with now 3 years in a row. So if you were in one of my read aloud classes last year, you may have already heard this. But if so, you are very, very lucky, because there's something special about getting to hear a book a second time. When you already know what's going to happen a little bit, you can pick up on some of the details that maybe you missed the first time around. So this book is called The Wishtree, and I'm waiting on my paper copy to come from Amazon, because I usually check this out from the library, and the library is closed. So I have it here in the Kindle version. It's called The Wishtree by Katherine Applegate, and it actually starts off with a poem called Be Different to Trees. The talking oak to the ancients spoke, but any tree will talk to me. What truth I know I garnered so, but those who want to talk and tell, and those who will not listeners be, will never hear a syllable out from the lips of any tree. And that was written by Mary Carolyn Davies in 1924. Chapter 1. It's hard to talk to trees. We're not big on chit-chat. That's not to say we can't do amazing things. Cradle downy owlets, steady flimsy tree forts, photosynthesize, things you'll never do. But talk to people, not so much. And just try to get a tree to tell a good joke. Trees do talk to some folks, the ones we know we can trust. We talk to daredevil squirrels. We talk to hardworking worms. We talk to flashy butterflies and bashful moths. Birds, they are delightful. Frogs, grumpy but good-hearted. Snakes, terrible gossips. Trees, never met a tree I didn't like. Well, okay, there's that sycamore down at the corner. Yakety, yakety, yak. That one. So, do we ever talk to people? Actually talk? The most people-y of people skills? Good question. And trees have a rather complicated relationship with people, after all. One minute you're hugging us, and the next you're turning us into tongue depressors and tables. Perhaps you're wondering why the fact that trees talk wasn't covered in science class during those Mother Nature is our friend lessons. Don't blame your teachers. They probably don't know that trees can talk. Most people don't. Nonetheless, if you find yourself standing near a particularly friendly-looking tree on a particularly lucky-feeling day, it can't hurt to listen up. Trees can't tell jokes, but we can certainly tell stories. And if all you hear is the whisper of leaves, don't worry. Most trees are introverts at heart. Name's Red, by the way. Maybe we've met. I'm an oak tree near the elementary school. Big, but not too big. Sweet shade in the summer and fine color in the fall. I'm proud to say that I'm a northern red oak, also known as Quercus rubra. Red oaks are one of the most common trees in North America. Why, in my neighborhood alone, hundreds upon hundreds of us are weaving our roots into the soil like knitters on a mission. I have ridged, reddish-gray bark, leathery leaves with pointed lobes, stubborn, searching roots, and, if I do say so myself, the best fall color on the street. Red doesn't begin to describe me. Come October, I look like I'm ablaze. It's a miracle the fire department doesn't come and try to hose me down every autumn. You might be surprised to learn that all red oaks are named Red. Likewise, all sugar maples are called Sugar, all junipers are called Juniper, and boojum trees are called Boojum. That's just how it is in the tree world. We don't need names to tell one another apart. Imagine a classroom where every child is named Melvin. Imagine that poor teacher trying to take attendance. Of course, there are exceptions to the name rule. Somewhere in Los Angeles, there's a palm tree who insists on being called Karma, but you know how California can be. My friends call me Red, and you can too. But for a long time, people in the neighborhood have called me the Wishtree. There's a reason for this, and it goes way back to when I wasn't much more than a tiny seed with higher aspirations. Every year on the first day of May, people come from all over town to adorn me with scraps of paper, tags, bits of fabric, snippets of yarn, and the occasional gym sock. Each offering represents a dream, a desire, a longing. Whether draped, tossed, or tied with a bow, they are all hopes for something better. Wish trees have a long and honorable history, going back centuries. There are many in Ireland, where they are usually hawthorns or the occasional ash tree, but you can find wish trees all over the world. For the most part, people are kind when they visit me. They seem to understand that a tight knot might keep me from growing the way I need to grow. They're gentle with my new leaves and careful with my exposed roots. After people write their hope on a rag or a piece of paper, they tie it onto one of my branches. Usually, they whisper the wish aloud. It's traditional to wish on the 1st of May, but people stop by throughout the year. Oh my, the things I've heard. I wish for a flying skateboard. I wish for a world with no war. I wish for a week with no clouds. I wish for the world's biggest candy bar. I wish for an A on my geometry test. I wish Miss Gentorini wasn't so grumpy in the morning. I wish my gerbil could talk. I wish my dad could get better. I wish I weren't hungry sometimes. I wish I weren't so lonely. I wish I knew what to wish for. So many wishes, grand and goofy, selfish and sweet. It's an honor, all the hopes bestowed upon my tired old limbs. Although, by the end of May Day, I look like someone dumped a huge basket of trash on top of me. As you've probably noticed, I'm more talkative than most trees. This is new for me. I'm still getting the hang of it. Nonetheless, I've always known how to keep a secret. You have to be discreet when you're a wish tree. People tell trees all kinds of things. They know we'll listen. It's not like we have a choice. Besides, the more you listen, the more you learn. Bongo says I'm a busybody, and I suppose she has a point. She's my best pal, a crow I've known since she was nothing but a pecking beak on a speckled egg. We disagree sometimes, but that's the way it is of all friends, no matter their species. I've seen many surprising friendships during my life. A pony and a toad, a red-tailed hawk and a white-footed mouse, a lilac bush and a monarch butterfly, and all of them have disagreements from time to time. I think Bongo is too pessimistic for such a young bird. Bongo thinks I'm too optimistic for such an old tree. It's true, I am an optimist. I prefer to take the long view on life. Old as I am, I've seen both good and bad, but I've seen far more good than bad. So Bongo and I agreed to disagree, and that's fine. We're very different after all. Bongo, for example, thinks the way we trees name ourselves is ridiculous. As is the custom with crows, Bongo chose her name after her first flight. It may not be her only name, however. Crows change names on a whim. Bongo's cousin, Gizmo, has had 17 names. Sometimes crows adopt human names. I've seen more Joe Crows than I've seen sunny days. Sometimes they name themselves after things that catch their fancy. Pop Top, Jujube, Dead Rat. They'll name themselves after aerobatic maneuvers, Death Spiral or Barrel Roll, or after colors, Aubergine or Beetle Black. Many crows opt for sounds they found they're fond of making. Crows are excellent mimics. I've met crows named Wind Chime, 18-wheeler, and Grouchy Cab Driver, not to mention a few others that are not appropriate for polite company. Down the street lives an aspiring rock band composed of 4 middle schoolers. They practice in a garage. Their instruments include an accordion, a bass guitar, a tuba, and bongo drums. The band has yet to perform outside the garage, but Bongo loves to sit on the roof and sway to their music. Names aren't the only way we differ from crows. Some trees are male, some trees are female, and some, like me, are both. It's confusing, as is so often the case with nature. Call me she, call me he, anything will work. Over the years, I've learned that botanists, those lucky souls who study the lives of plants all day, call some trees, such as hollies and willows, dioecious, which means they have separate male and female trees. Lots of other trees, like me, are called monoecious, which is just a fancy way of saying that on the same plant you'll find separate male and female flowers. It's also evidence that trees have far more interesting lives than some of us give credit for. One thing trees and crows have in common, in fact, one thing all the natural world has in common, is the rule that we're not supposed to talk to people. It's for our own protection, really. At least, that's the theory. I've often wondered if the endless silence is a good idea. There have been so many times I've wanted to speak up, to intervene, to help people. I've never said a word, though. That's just the way the world has always worked. Had there been slip-ups? Sure. Mistakes have been made. Last year, I heard about a frog named Fly who'd been napping in a mailbox. All frogs are named after bugs they enjoy eating. When the mailman opened the box, Fly leapt out with a frantic croak. The mailman fainted. He woke up to Fly, who was apologizing profusely, squatting on his forehead. Clearly a breach of the don't talk to people rule. But as always seems to happen, the incident was soon forgotten. After all, the mailman was absolutely certain that frogs can't talk. Just hearing things, he no doubt told himself. Interestingly enough, he retired not long after the frog incident. In any case, when you consider the number of trees and frogs and otters and wrens, dragonflies and armadillos, and everybody else in the natural world, you'd think people have caught on to our little secret by now. What can I say? Nature is tricky, and people are, well, sorry, but most of you aren't that observant. Perhaps you're wondering, if you're a curious or doubting sort, just exactly how trees communicate. You may find yourself inspecting a nearby ponderosa pine, perhaps, or an aspen or a sweet gum, puzzling out the magic. People speak with the help of lungs, throats, voice boxes, tongues, and lips, thanks to an intricate symphony of sound and breath and movement. But there are plenty of other ways to convey information. An eyebrow cocked. I can't do that. A giggle stifled. A tear brushed aside. These, too, are ways you express yourself. For a tree, communication is just as complicated and miraculous as it is for humans. It's a mysterious dance of sunlight and sugar, wind and water and soil. We build invisible bridges to connect with the world. Frogs have their own way of connecting. Same for dogs, same for newts and spiders, elephants, and eagles. How exactly do we do it? Well, that's for us to know and you to figure out. Nature also adores a good secret. I'm not just a tree, by the way. I'm a home, a community. Folks nest on my branches, burrow beneath my roots, lay eggs on my leaves, and then there are the hollows. Tree hollows, holes in a trunk or branch, are not uncommon, especially in trees like me who have been around a while. Hollows can be small enough for tiny salt and pepper chickadees or a family of deer mice, or they can be quite large, big enough for an open-minded bear. Of course, I'm a city tree. We don't get a lot of bears around here, unless they're of the teddy variety. But I've hosted more than my share of raccoons, foxes, skunks, opossums, and mice. One year, I was home to a lovely and exceedingly polite porcupine family. I've even sheltered a person. Long story. I have lots of these stored up, the way a squirrel hoards acorns. Hollows happen for many reasons. Woodpeckers, fallen branches, lightning, disease, and burrowing insects. In my case, I have 3 hollows. 2 medium-sized ones were made by woodpeckers. The largest one happened when I was quite young. I lost a large branch that was weakened by wet snow during a nor'easter. It was a big wound, slow to heal, and my spring leafing that year was paltry. My fall color was pale and, frankly, embarrassing. But eventually the hole healed, widened with the help of insects, and now, about 4 feet off the ground, I have a deep oval hollow. Hollows offer protection from the elements, a secure spot to sleep and to stash your belongings. They're a safe place. Hollows are proof that something bad can become something good with enough time and care and hope. Being a home to others isn't always easy. Sometimes I feel like an apartment complex with too many residents who don't always get along. Still, we make it work. There's a lot of give and take in nature. Woodpeckers hammer at my trunk, but they also eat the annoying pests. Cool grass cools the earth, but it also bickers with me over water. Every spring brings new residents, old friends, and more chances for compromise. This spring in particular has seen quite the baby boom. Currently, I'm home to owl nestlings, baby opossums, tiny raccoons. I'm also visited regularly by the skunk kids who live underneath the front porch of a nearby house. This is unprecedented. Never have I sheltered so many babies. It just doesn't happen. Animals like space. They like their own territory. Normally, there would be arguing, perhaps even a stolen nest or a midnight battle. And certainly there have been some disagreements. But I've made it clear that eating your neighbors will not be allowed while I'm in charge. Me, I don't feel crowded at all having so much company. Making others feel safe is a fine way to spend your days. I have one more community member, although visitor is probably a better way to describe Samar. In January, she moved with her parents into one of the houses I shade, a tiny blue house with a sagging porch and a tiny garden. She is perhaps 10 years old or so, with wary eyes and a shy smile. Samar has the look of someone who has seen too much, someone who wants the world to quiet itself. Soon after moving in, Samar began sneaking into the yard once her parents had fallen asleep. Even on the coldest nights, she trudged outside in her red boots and green jacket. Her breath was a frosty veil. She would stare at the moon and at me, and sometimes at the little green house next door, where a boy who looks to be about her age lives. As it grew warmer, Samar would venture out in her pajamas and robe and sit beneath me on an old blanket spattered with moonlight. Her silence was so complete, her gentleness so apparent, that the residents would crawl from their nests of thistledown and dandelion fluff to join her. They seemed to accept her as one of their own. Bongo especially loved Samar. She would flit to her shoulder and settle there. Sometimes she would say, "Hello," in a fine imitation of Samar's voice. Often, Bongo gave Samar little gifts she'd found during her daily flights. A Monopoly token, it was the car. A gold hair ribbon, a cap from a root beer bottle. Bongo keeps a stash of odds and ends in one of my smaller hollows, which the opossums kindly tolerate. "You never know who I might need to bribe," she likes to say. But her gifts to Samar weren't bribes. They were just Bongo's way of saying, "I'm glad we're friends." If this were a fairy tale, I would tell you there was something magical about Samar, that she cast a spell on the animals, perhaps. Animals don't just leave their nests and burrows willingly. They're afraid of people, and with good reason. But this isn't a fairy tale, and there was no spell. Animals compete for resources, just like humans. They eat one another. They fight for dominance. Nature is not always pretty or fair or kind. But sometimes surprises happen, and Samar, every spring night, reminded me that there is beauty in stillness and grace in acceptance, and that you're never too old to be surprised. I was pleased to see Samar's family join the neighborhood. It had been a long while since we'd had any newcomers, but I knew that with time they would put down roots, just like so many other families from so many other places. I know a thing or two about roots. One night, not long ago, Samar came out to visit. It was 2 a.m, late, even for her. She had been crying. Her cheeks were damp. She leaned against me, and her tears were like hot rain. In her hand was a piece of small cloth, pink with little dots. Something was written on it. A wish. The first wish I'd seen in months. I wasn't surprised she knew about the Wishtree tradition. I'm kind of a local celebrity. Samar reached up, gently pulled down my lowest branch, and tied the fabric in a loose knot. "I wish," she whispered, "for a friend." She glanced over at the greenhouse. Behind an upstairs curtain, a shadow moved, and with that, Samar vanished back into the little blue house. When you stand still for over 2 centuries, while the world whirls past, things happen. Mostly, by far and away, good things have happened in my life. Leaves have cooled picnics and proposers. Beneath my boughs, vows have been made, hearts mended. Nappers have napped, dreamers have dreamed, and I've watched ascents attempted, listened to stories spun, and the laughter, always and forever laughter. But sometimes things happen that aren't so good. When they occur, I've learned that there's not much you can do except stand tall and reach deep. I have, for example, been hacked at, carved into, used for target practice. I've been underwatered, overpruned, fertilized, and fussed over, ignored and neglected. I've been struck by lightning and battered by sleet. I've been threatened with axes, chainsaws, diseases, and insects. I've tolerated the sharp claws of squirrels and the nagging pokes of woodpeckers. I've been climbed by cats and marked by dogs. I have my aches and pains like everyone. Last year, I had a mite infestation that drove me nuts. Leaf blister, city mold, oak wilt, leaf scorch. Been there, done that. Still, trees are luckier than people in one way. Only 1% of a fully grown tree is actually alive at any one time. Most of me is made of wood cells that are no longer living. In many ways, that makes me tougher than you. So yes, I've seen a lot, and who knows, I may see much more. I could live to be 300, 500 years old even. It happens. Red oaks lead long lives, longer than our daintier friends, black willows. And yet, a few days after Samar's tearful wish, something happened that made me wonder if I'd finally witnessed too much. The morning was budding, and I was waiting for warmth. Down the street, a lanky boy was lingering near a stop sign. Head down, he was hunched over like a wind-blown weed. In his right hand was something shiny, a tool maybe, or a pen. He was smiling just a bit, as if he told himself a joke only he, perhaps, understood. All day long I see people lost in thought, talking to themselves, grinning, frowning. He was nothing out of the ordinary. I was in the midst of a conversation with Bongo, who had just pointed out to me that I was a year older, 216 rings to be precise. Another sprout day, I said. I still feel like a sapling. You don't look a day over 150, Bongo replied. Best looking tree on this block. I paused for comic effect, getting up there. Bongo, who was perched on my lowest branch, sighed. A crow sighs, unmistakable, like a groan from a tiny, cranky old man. Tree humor, I explained, just in case Bongo had missed it. Although, of course, she hadn't. Bongo misses nothing. Because, I'm so tall. Really, Red? Bongo stretched, admiring her lustrous blue-black wings. That's the best you got for me this morning? Maybe you'd appreciate my joke more if you weren't so sensitive about your stature, I teased. Covids don't give a flying tail feather about height, Bongo said. Smarts, wiles, trickery, cunning. That's what counts in our neck of the woods. Corvids is a fancy name for birds like crows, ravens, jays, and magpies. Bongo says she's too classy for a label as common as crow. A soft wind tickled my branches. Spring, that old rascal, was teasing us with the promise of warmer days. The truth is, I said, it doesn't matter what size you are, Bongo. We grow as we must grow, as our seeds decided long ago. Red. Way too early in the morning for the wise old tree routine. Bongo gave me a gentle peck. Although, you're right, it doesn't matter how tall you are. In a fluttery blur, she sailed to a telephone pole far above my leafy canopy. Not when you can fly, pal. At almost the same moment, Samar and the boy who lived in the greenhouse, Stephen, stepped onto their porches. Both had backpacks. Both looked eager to greet the day. Their eyes met. Stephen nodded, just a flicker, and Samar nodded back. Not a hello, exactly, just an acknowledgement. Stephen ran off toward the elementary school down the street, but Samar hesitated. Hello, she called softly. Right on cue, Bongo replied. Hello, as she did every morning, sounding just like Samar. Bongo can do a passable tuba, an impressive chihuahua, and a fine police siren. Samar looked up at Bongo, grinned, and headed toward school. With that, Bongo let loose a hoarse and gleeful caw and set off to wait for children to arrive at school. She was a regular there. Everybody knew her. She enjoyed annoying the children and then enjoyed letting her annoy them. Bongo especially liked to untie shoelaces. While the children were busy retying them, she would snatch treats from their lunch bags. Every now and then, she would even make a polite request. She would say, "Chip, please," "No way," and "You rock," when it served her purposes. Watching Bongo soar, I considered, not for the first time, my rambling roots. What would it be like to fly, to burrow, to swim, or to gallop? Delightful, no doubt. Sheer joy. And yet, I wouldn't trade a single rootlet for any of it. It is a great gift indeed to love who you are. By this time, the lanky boy had walked past me, swiveled, and returned. Glancing over his shoulder, he stepped onto the brown lawn that blanketed my roots. The air changed, quivering the way it will when people are near, with chemicals, with pulsing heat, and humanness. And then it happened. He dug into my trunk with the object in his hand, fast and deliberate. Again, he checked his surroundings. An elderly woman crossing the street smiled at him and shook her head. She was probably thinking, how sweet. I'll bet he's carving a heart with initials in it. Oh, to be young and in love. People are under the impression that trees don't mind being carved into, especially if hearts are involved. For the record, we mind. I'd never seen the boy before. He was big, maybe a high schooler. It's hard to know with people. With a tree, I can sense to the month, sometimes to the day, its age. I couldn't tell what he was carving, of course, but I could tell from the determined way he moved that it was meant to hurt. Not me. Somehow I sensed it wasn't meant to hurt me. I was just his canvas. That said, it's not exactly a picnic getting hacked into. Bark is my skin, my protection from the world, and any wound makes it harder to fight off disease and insects. I wanted to yell, "Stop!" to say something, anything. But of course, I didn't. It's not our way. Trees are meant to listen, to observe, to endure. He was done quickly. He stood back, admired his work, gave a little nod, and then left. As he walked away, I saw the tool clutched in his fist, a little screwdriver with a yellow handle, thin as a twig, bright as a meadowlark. Bongo was the first to see what had happened to me. She landed at the base of my trunk, head cocked. Dropping the potato chip in her beak, she cried, "I leave you alone for a few minutes, and look what happens! What on earth?" "It seems someone mistook me for a pumpkin," I said. When she didn't smile, I added, "Because, I was carved." For the millionth time, Red, explaining doesn't make things any funnier. Bongo flew to my lowest scaffold branch, one of my big primary limbs. She examined my injury. "Does it hurt?" "Not the way an injury might hurt you. Trees are different that way." "I gotta do something," Bongo said. "There's nothing to be done. You've got a major boo-boo and I want to help. You're the wise old tree. Tell me what to do." "Really, Bongo, time heals all wounds." Bongo hates it when I philosophize. She rolled her eyes. At least, I think that's what she did. It's hard to tell with crows. Their eyes are like little morning blackberries, dark and dewy. "I just hope my bark isn't ruined," I said. "That's my favorite side." "It's not ruined, just decorated, like those tattoos people get." Bongo nudged me with her beak. "Show me who did this. I'll get him. I'll squawk at his window in the middle of the night. I'll dive bomb him and yank out some hair." She flapped her wings. "No, better yet, I'll make a deposit on his head. I'll make a deposit on his head every day for a year." I didn't ask what kind of deposit. I'm quite sure I knew. "Bongo, dear," I said, "that won't be necessary." Bongo shifted from foot to foot, something she did when she was working out a problem. She said, "it's almost time for wishing day. Maybe this is some kind of a wish, just a poorly delivered one." "Another wishing day," I repeated. It seemed like we just had one. Had a whole year already come and gone? Days have a way of slipping past like raindrops in a river. "One more round," Bongo said, "of greedy people bugging you with their needs." "One more round of hopeful people wishing for better things," I corrected. Wishing day was always a bit hard on me and on my residents. Usually the animals and birds stayed away that day to avoid curious hands and endless photographs. But it was just one day. I understood its history and my role in it. I knew people were full of longings. A mother tugging a toddler along the sidewalk froze in place when she saw my trunk. "Mommy, what does it say?" asked her little girl, who was clutching a stuffed toy dog by its bedraggled tail. The mother didn't answer. "Mommy?" They crossed the lawn. The mother stopped close to me. "It says, leave," she finally said. Like trees have leaves? Gently, the mother traced my cuts with her index finger. Maybe, she answered. Maybe like that. She looked over at the 2 houses near me. Shaking her head, she tightened her grip on the little girl's hand. Let's hope that's all it means. All right, that's where we're going to stop for now. That's about 30 minutes, our normal. So I will be back again soon with another 30 minutes, and we'll find out more about this word leave carved in the trunk of the wish tree. Bye, guys. I'll see you next time.